welcome you guys to come and take a seat.
Be trying to cash out. Next stop.
Oh, that's one of the things I motion. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming in. Welcome to those who sat through. Normally we don't deliberate on things for that long, but it's one close to our hearts. So how do you guys want to start? You just want to run through the wee prezzo, introduce yourselves perhaps first up, and then go from there? Yep, cool.
So my name's Emily, this is Caitlin and Louis, all part of the CDM team. We've got Brendan online as well. Apologies he couldn't be with us, he's actually got COVID, bless him. And we're just basically going to do a run through of what we do as a team, the team structure, and then I guess through a few of your hazards and how these guys are helping the community prepare for them. And then we'll finish with your role in the whole of the 4-hour process.
Yeah.
Cool. So the structure in New Zealand, not sure how we're aware of it. So essentially there's sort of 3 levels.
Sorry.
It's a playback.
Yep, carry on.
Okay, sweet. So sort of 3 levels that civil defences operates at in New Zealand. We have the local, regional and national level. Our team sits at the local level, which is probably who they're dealing with more often than not. So that's Christchurch Civil Defence Emergency Management associated with CCC. And we're responsible for Christchurch City and Banks Miniatures, so just shaded in a bit on the map there. And then above us at regional is Emergency Management Canterbury. They also operate out of JESP, the Justice Emergency Services Precinct. They have 9 TAs, so groups like Christchurch that they look after in their region. And then at the national level, you have NEMA, and they have 16 of those regional groups that they oversee. Next slide. Cool. And then this is our team at City Council. Currently, we only have 7 full-time CDM staff for a population of around 400,000, which makes us responsible for approximately 57,000 people each, which is a decent chunk, well out of a manageable span of control. So at the top, we have Brendan, who is online and with COVID at the moment. He's our manager. He's sort of in charge of making sure that we're delivering fit. He's waiting. You're wearing a mask at home.
Those people that drive with the mask on their own.
Right. Safety first, Aaron.
It's Barno.
Right.
So he leads us to make sure we're delivering fit for purpose emergency management arrangements. And then we have Rich, who's in operational readiness. And so he makes sure we have the training, systems, processes, everything we need to effectively respond to and manage emergencies. Keegan at the minute is wearing 2 hats. So he's doing planning and welfare. Planning, pretty much what it sounds like, identifies needs and then creates plans for those for different and specific emergency events and hazards. And then welfare, make sure that we deliver our responsibilities for welfare services under legislation. We have Jan in volunteers, so she is responsible for our response team. She has 3 response teams and then 1 emergency support team. It's about 150 volunteers. And she makes sure they're well trained, well resourced, everything they need so that they can go if there is an emergency. Then we have myself and Louis. We do community resilience, so that is public education, it's talking to groups, and it's also supporting communities in preparing for emergencies with response planning and other things like that. And then we have Em, who does projects, specific projects that at the minute, what, tsunami sirens and radios at the minute, I think. Yeah. Cool. So we all have 3 parts to our role: our BAU, which is our business as usual role, which is the slide that we just went over, and then emergency response and duty officer. So business as usual, let's start there. There are 4 hours for emergency management for the cycle: readiness, response, recovery and reduction. Our team predominantly for BAU lives in readiness, and then during an emergency we're in response and recovery. sort of loops back to readiness for us. We don't do a lot in the reduction space, but that's sort of where you guys come in more. Next slide. And then duty officer role. So unfortunately, hazards are not a 9 to 5, Monday to Friday sort of a thing. We have someone from our team who is on duty 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. You're on for a week at a time, and then sort of roughly every 2 months, but at the minute it's like every month and a half-ish with the number of team members that we have. We provide 24/7 on-call cover. If anything happens that could escalate into an emergency or people are a little concerned about, get a phone call, doesn't matter what time of day it is. Yeah, that line isn't for the public, it's for CDEM to be contactable with other agencies, so it's not something you guys would necessarily be using. But sort of NEMA has it, Group has it, FENS has it, that sort of thing.
So while we're on duty, we'll be watching the weather, and if the weather escalates, we may stand up at EOC, or we may look at whether it becomes an emergency. We don't necessarily need an emergency. If you do next slide, there, thanks. We don't necessarily need an emergency to stand up our emergency operations centre, but it gives certain powers that we may need to respond to an event happening, natural or otherwise, as written there, that causes or may cause loss of life or injury, endangering safety of the public, and the big one, cannot be dealt with by emergency services or requires significant coordinated response, or requires certain powers that an emergency declaration gives. Which means, go to the next slide there, coordination. So we share a Justice Precinct with New Zealand Police and St John and Fire and Emergency. They're all co-located in one part of the building. The picture you can see is of our operations centre, which sits sort of sandwiched between everybody. On the left side of the screen, you can see that that's police. They've got offices there. Upstairs is the call centre for the South Island. On the other side of that photo is the regional fire command centre, and at the back of the photo is the police regional command centre. So we'll coordinate the response between the different emergency services or different agencies. It might be MBIE, it might be MPI or health that we're coordinating with, and we may monitor the situation. We could support other agencies if they need assistance, or we could coordinate response activities. We don't do on the ground stuff, so we don't do car crashes, we don't do fires, unless there is a whole ton of them and the police and fire need support. So what would we respond to? Those are the hazards that are part of the group plan. Earthquake and tsunami are the ones that worry us the most. Earthquake, obviously, there's a lot of damage, and we were in the February earthquakes, not a lot of loss of life, but still significant. And yeah, tsunami, on the other hand, will be devastation as well, but a lot of life lost. So those are the ones that we are kept up at night for when we're on duty. Flood and adverse weather are on the bigger side there because they happen more often, and because of the frequency, we need to respond obviously more often to them. Landslides, fire, pandemic, a lot of those are of concern, but they may come out of the other ones. Landslide is particular concern after what happened up north. All of those may require us to coordinate a response. Emily's just going to talk a little bit El Nino, which comes under the extreme temperature there.
Yeah, so we just thought we'd touch on El Nino because we're seeing evidence of it already, the super El Nino cycle. For your community board area, it'll look like, I guess, the really, really dry weather and heat waves as we move into summer. So we're preparing for that now. Obviously, it's going to affect Banks Peninsula quite a bit with fire, an early fire season. There is maybe more risk of fire in this community board area as well. But generally, it will be about resources being sort of moved over to Banks Peninsula, supporting them. Brendan's had a series of meetings with parks as well for the rural fire, working with them on like water resources, what planting we're doing, and just basically preparing for it. Again, this ward area, it'll look kind of like heat waves. And so how do we help the community that we're in a cost of living crisis, that can't afford to have their cooling systems running? What does that look like opening up community centres to help with the cooling kind of effects? So it's just to touch on it, so you're thinking about it as front of mind as we move into that more serious weather system.
Just on that one, I always find it interesting that we get concerned about people overheating and dying, but every winter people freeze to death, but we don't do anything about it. We don't like open up the libraries and go, all the old people come in at midnight. It's because tonight's dropping to -8. But my brother's a cop, and so they do sudden deaths, as you'll be aware, after a cold night, and the worst he's had on duty is 4. So he's collected 4 dead elderly people in one day.
Yeah.
People freezing to death, and people were worried about the planet warming up, like bring it on.
Yeah.
The sooner the warmer the better, but yeah, we don't seem to care about them.
You'll notice as well, like it will be interspersed with cold spikes. So we'll have these like really dry periods like May, interspersed with very, very cold weather spikes. So yeah, you're absolutely right. I'll let Brendan take over. But
Brendan?
Oh yeah, look, good point raised by Councillor Kewen. We won't be dealing with the individual deaths as such in CDM. It still remains a police responsibility. But we have started the planning for extreme cold and extreme heat. So the team here are referencing El Nino, which for us is likely to look like really challenging spring and summer. But we absolutely do recognise the challenges associated with extreme cold as well. So while those deaths are absolutely tragic, only 4 in a night is still very much a police event. If that number escalated to the point where wider and more significant coordination was required, that would be our role. And the role in the extreme cold hazard is well known, and the planning has begun for that.
And not to speak for Louis and Caitlin, but whilst they're working with community, that's the sort of planning they'll do for any outcome, like cold. Yeah.
Thank you.
So now that we've just got to the next slide there. And we know all about hazards, or we make people aware of the hazards. We encourage everybody, including those in the room here, to make a plan. And it's not writing down the plan that's the important bit. The important bit is actually going through different scenarios as to what you need to do as a family. So you can see on the bottom there, it says if we can't get home. On the sheets that we give out, it talks about if we have to stay at home, or if we've got no power, if we've got no water, if we can't get internet. And those are all conversations with the people you live with, so that you know what you're going to do. You write it down, which is still important, but not as important. And then you tell other family members, like brothers and sisters with their families, encourage them to have the same conversations. Because if you've had the conversations before something happens, you've already started the process. You don't have a, oh, what to do moment. You have, hang on, we talked about this. What did we say? So you're already hitting the ground in a forward motion. Part of it also is to have your grab bag or your household supplies. If you're stuck at home, you need your household supplies. If you have to go because of an evacuation, you need those grab bag items. And grab bag is just simply that. It's a bag full of those important items, food and water, torch, etc., medications, prescriptions, so that you've got what you need if you have to leave where you are. Yeah, sorry.
That's great and it's fantastic. But I just, as a dog owner, there's no reference in there, and because I'm assuming you're doing this as a slide that goes to everybody, but actually something in around pets.
Yes.
So dogs or your cat or your.
Says it applies for babies and pets up there.
Yeah. So the other side, this is part of a whole sequence of different slides that we go through. On the household supplies, we do have the
babies and
supplies for babies and pets. And
yeah.
When we talk about the make a plan, we actually go through each of the different scenarios. And the last scenario of the 7 is, what about your pets?
Yeah.
Because yes, they are very important.
Yeah.
Yeah. especially the companion animals and people. I know I've got 3 cats at home. My kids would be devastated if we didn't take care of them. I would be too, actually, but yeah. Household supplies, if you're stuck at home, or like if AF8 went, we may not have power, etc., for a while. So having those at home means that you don't have to rush down and get all the water supplies out of the supermarket and the toilet paper. I think there's still people going through toilet paper since the COVID days, or even since the earthquake days. But yeah, it's having those supplies at home, at least 3 litres of water per person. It's not only for drinking, it's also for cleaning, cooking, washing. And it says at least 3 days, that's the minimum. If you can, aim for 7 to 10 days, but not everybody can achieve that. When something happens, we'll either put out an emergency mobile alert, which goes from cell phone towers. We don't dial up everybody's phone or set a computer to do that. It just pings the cell tower. Everything within reach of that cell tower, that phone alert goes off. So if you have been across the other side of town when they had a boil water notice, you could drive in. As soon as you got into the area, your phone would ping. If you're driving, skirting the area, it would keep telling you, because every time you went into the range, you get the alert. These are trusted sources, so the websites and social media, the 3 listed there, are trusted sources of information. Really important that we put out the trusted social media. I know my friend's been overseas, comes back, he's been back for 2 months, and there's another post of him being in Rome, and it's like, it doesn't timestamp it. So if we make sure we're constantly feeding that, then we're keeping that up to date. TV and radio, another important medium to actually get the information out. And we have trusted radio stations that must put out what we require them to put out.
I know this doesn't affect you so much, but just a quick note, last June, council decided that we would be decommissioning the tsunami sirens. We've done a bit of work around whether they're relevant anymore. Decisions been taken to decommission them. That will be happening later on this year. Again, not really relevant for your area, but just a note on, it's the EMA, the emergency mobile alerts, that people now get is our primary alerting method. Among those other things that Louise just said. And I guess from your point of view, this will be the place where people will be coming to. So we'll be expecting people to evacuate and keep moving west to make room for people evacuating the area. So I guess it's just a FYI.
Just on the tsunami one,
Yes.
because earlier you said the loss of life could be large or catastrophic. What modeling's that? Because that's new to me and I've seen a lot.
Close, it's a wave generating
yeah,
close to shore.
Subduction, and so that's the Hikurangi Trench going, and so it's close to shore. So that, and it's the subduction, so it creates the wave. That's the only model that would do that. And what's our timing on that?
All 3 models could do that. The timing could be as little as
90 minutes
90 minutes
to evacuate.
Right, but someone must have modelled the worst wave.
We've modelled the worst wave for area to be the inundation, but the length would depend on quite a lot of factors. So whether people self-evacuate in time, whether the roads get clogged up, that modelling hasn't been done to a significant level.
Time of day. Brendan would like to speak.
Brendan's the expert on this.
Yeah, another good question. Lots of modelling has been done, and Emily touched on the different factors. So time of day, time of year, school day or not, height of tide, time to first wave arrival, etc. Excuse me, all of them are factors in that. Louis is right in saying the potential for loss of life is catastrophic. We're trying to mitigate that through really comprehensive planning and
Mask back on. Get your mask on, Brendan.
yeah, sorry. That's through planning, education, and community risk modelling as well, and community risk planning. So what Louis is saying here is quite right. It has the potential to be an absolutely catastrophic event, and what our job is to do is to make it less catastrophic. I won't put my hand up and say we're going to prevent every death, because I think that would be, while it's our aspiration, I think that would be extremely difficult. We're trying to make it a little less catastrophic.
Right, so do you have a position on the fireworks on the pier? Because
Yes, I do. Yep.
if it goes, I mean, that'll be your worst nightmare, is that the Hikurangi Trench goes when everyone's turned up for the fireworks, because you can't get out anyway, and the loss of life would be horrendous.
Yeah, look, I live out in this part of the world too, so the fireworks are only 5 minutes from my place, and I understand the risk. But yeah, you're quite right. That would be a confluence of extremely bad luck and timing for it to go off when the fireworks were on. I guess the balance there is the likelihood of that event happening at that exact moment. We need to be reasonable about that, and it's still very small. One of the benefits of having that fireworks display out there through Matariki is it provides us with a really good analogy for our modelling. So we don't ignore the opportunity. We actually use it to get our researchers out there and understand what the congestion looks like, and the timing and the behaviour and the traffic patterns to help us with our planning. So yes, there is a risk, but we also use it as an opportunity.
Really hones in that message, like, don't get in your car because you will get stuck.
Right.
Get on a bike or walk out of the zone.
Yeah.
And that, fireworks helps us literally prove that point.
Yeah.
So you know, you talk about going west. I'm assuming Sumner, you basically say up the hill.
Brendan, did you submit on the Pages Road Bridge design?
Yes, it did. Yeah, we got a chance.
So were you not opposed to the speed humps leading up to the bridge?
I didn't actually get involved with this, the really detailed design, more the.
I think you should submit any time, because if you guys have concerns over speed humps leading into an emergency exit bridge, because the very last cars coming out won't be doing 30. Do you know what I mean? When everyone's gone and someone's rushed in to get their mum who's elderly and can't walk and blah, 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 and the streets are desolate, but the waves rumbling through the dunes, that car's not doing 25 or 30. The last one's out. They're going to be flying.
Yeah, they will be fine. There's also, we've done some modelling on traffic speed in there, and the average speed of a car moving in that sort of evacuation is about 1.6 k an hour.
Right.
So the traffic hump there for 99% of the people would be irrelevant.
Cool.
The speed hump thing, we weren't involved in the really detailed design considerations there, and probably don't need to be.
Cool. Thank you.
Fine.
Yeah.
Bike and run.
Oh, I covered that, but yeah. So our primary methods now are EMAs, but obviously listen to the radio. If you're noticing the water, anything weird in the water, we encourage people to take note of that and get out. So basically, like, self-evacuation, long and strong, get gone. Don't get in your car if you're in that area, and walk, bicycle out if you can. Yeah, I think we've probably covered it all, so
Yeah.
we can move on. Next slide. Yeah, so like Caitlin alluded to, we're not so much in the reduction space. That's more your policy, your planners within council. I guess your role in reduction, we're making some, so we, council, are making some big decisions on where we develop now, and if you can support the PC12 process in basically not developing in dumb places now, that massively helps us in a response, because we're not having to rescue people from areas they really shouldn't have been allowed to build in or develop in. It's a bit late for the development that's already there, but future planning that supports sustainability is vital, and everyone in council has a role to play that, all the decision makers. In the readiness space, I guess it's supporting yourselves, having a good understanding of what your hazards are for this area and what future hazards might look like. Civil defence are kind of at the spiky end of climate change, although we don't really deal very much in it, but obviously we have to respond to the severe weather events we're getting, and I suppose for your area, groundwater levels rising are a concern, and the flooding, whereas a little bit quiet, whereas not so much the other stuff that other areas are experiencing. But just having really good knowledge and communicating that to your communities is really helpful for us. And these guys are out and about constantly working with the community to make plans and put plans in place for that. In a response, you are very trusted members of your community. You've been elected. So you can tell the community the messaging, as Louis was talking earlier on, the messages, the trusted source of information that's coming. If you guys can relay that to your community, they trust you and they will take action based on what you're saying. So you can be really helpful during a response in providing intelligence, because you also live out in the community. That intelligence comes to us through your normal channels. So if you're speaking to your CDAs, we actively, when we're activating the ESC, we will ring the CDAs and ask them and CRAs for information on how their communities are doing. They have the relationships. You also have relations to the community. So yeah, funnel that information through your normal channels, through your community governance teams, and then we get in touch with them, and that's how that system works. Obviously, any threats to life, immediate threats, is a 111 call. That's easy enough. And then, yeah, relaying those messages and stopping, helping us to stop that misinformation. When people say, oh, actually, flooding's really, really bad here or not too bad there, actually like helping us relay information that's from a trusted source is really, really awesome. And in terms of recovery, again, you're embedded into your communities. You'll have a sense of that recovery fatigue, how people are feeling. You know your areas that are more vulnerable and therefore can't adapt quite as well as other areas. And so us having that information, if you give us a heads up on actually this area is probably not going to recover very well from whatever hazard it is, that's really helpful for us in our planning going forward. I think I've covered everything. Was there any questions on?
Specifically, but I've got a couple of questions, and I'm sure a few of the team might have as well. Can we move into?
Yeah,
Really?
yeah,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Yeah. Cool. Couple from me, because Aaron, myself, and Lucy are Harewood, right? So blood is a big thing for us, and I'm on the Waimāero was here in Cuss Stock Bank committee and had a couple of wee briefings around there, and the southern point down Kaipoi is where the most imminent flood risk is, which would back flood Kaipoi for the most part. But I guess the question for me, and it will be a good thing for us to have a really clear understanding of, is realistically, maybe there's a northwest winds and fire, so there's obviously a potential out there at the back of McLean's Island with all of the dry brush and whatnot. But it seems like if there was an earthquake, stock banks were damaged, and then you had the biggest catastrophic risk outside of just earthquake damage for our area is the potential of our flood protection failing because of an earthquake.
Yep.
And then overlaying that, if it was in winter time and it was flood season or something like that, causing issues.
Swiss cheese is the river being full, then getting an earthquake, because the banks won't go when the river's full.
Yeah.
But if you've got an earthquake and the river's full,
Then there's nothing you can do about it. But
it might go depending on the type of earthquake.
like from our perspective, because generally, if you're going to have a big earthquake like that, and say something like that's bang close enough together where it causes that, like it's never one thing, right? It's the cascade of a couple of things where the worst things happen. It's not just one thing in isolation, because you can generally tend to plan for that.
Yeah.
But if we have like AF8's the scenario, right, and power goes out and comms goes down, knowing exactly what you should be doing, like how do you guys communicate to the public if you have power go out for a week and then comms go down? Like, what does that look like from your perspective? Yeah, can you?
3 months.
Brendan?
Yeah, hey, thank you. And another good question. I guess the example I'd use there was, it's been raised again recently. There was an earthquake a couple of days ago, centered 40k north of Te Anau, and it triggered a whole lot of tsunami concern for the south coast of the southern South Island. And the question was asked of John Price, the Director of Emergency Management at NEMA, what should people do when the technology fails, which is the same question we're getting asked here. It's exactly the same question. And that is, if you know, the answer is if you know your hazard really well, you should rely on your own personal disaster sense. So when the comms are so badly compromised by a large scale earthquake or some other event, and you live in that part of the world, you should be paying particular attention every single day to what's going on in that river. And no agency is going to rush out there to help because we'll have a whole lot of other considerations that we're dealing with. And, City Council, 3 water staff will be involved, of course. ECAN will be involved from a stop bank, flood bank point of view. But when mass comms is down, people need to take personal responsibility for managing the hazards in the area. So if they're worried about the river and the stop banks and all the comms are down, well, then the sensible decision would be to get out of the way. And there's no magic bullet for that, I'm afraid. That's about people taking personal responsibility in the circumstances that they're in. And if the comms are down, then they've got to take more responsibility.
Yeah, okay, that's good to know. Just one follow-up question, then I'll let someone else go. What does re-establishing communications and then trying to get communications out to, the key stakeholders or, say, trying to brief elected members or whatever so they can go out to the communities and be a focal point? Like, is there some kind of approach that you guys would have in a scenario where maybe it's not exactly acute, but how are you trying to get information out to people so that you don't have misinformation and things like that going on in a situation like that? Like, what should we be looking out for?
So what's likely to happen if things go bang badly? The Justice Precinct is designed to be a really resilient building. It's IL4, which means it's super strong. Police, fire and ambo and a few other services are contained within it. We'll have comms to the outside world via satellite or other means to enable that. So if we have to communicate to the community via the elected members because the local communications framework has fallen over, what we'd be asking you to do is come into the Justice Precinct on a regular schedule, maybe once or twice a day, get a briefing there from the controller via the mayor to say these are the key messages, this is what we want to tell the community that we're doing, this is what we want to tell the community that we know, what we don't know, what we want them to do. So very simple, usually about 4 things. So it's nice and straightforward. And then we'd ask you to go out in your community and distribute those messages and then come back in the following day and we'd update you on where we're at. You could update us on your community intel. We'd share that, we'd have that information exchange and we'd go back and rinse and repeat that process until the telecommunication companies had the opportunity to repair the network. So we have really clear priorities and see them at life risk first, of course, but almost always one of the next things we're doing is making sure the roads are cleared, and if the roads are cleared, we can put the contractors on them to fix all the other problems, stop banks, power, phone, internet, all those things. So people number one, and then generally it's about getting the roads open so we can get the contractors out to the places to fix the stuff out there so we can do that comms message. It gets pretty simple. The more complicated the emergency gets, the more simple the response arrangements need to be. So in this case, we'd ask you to come in, give you a briefing, go out and talk to your people, come back the next day and do it again.
Yeah, okay. Because you'd imagine people would start going to the likes of your local community libraries and community hubs to try and get news, right? So you just have information or people spun up there. And I know Belfast has a bit of a plan around the Belfast Community Network, etc. So yeah, okay, that makes sense.
And I think before we finish up, we might just get Nat to give you guys a bit of an update of the local hub stuff, that the work she's doing in this area.
Yeah, just as a refresher or a reminder, if you didn't know, and certainly because you've got new staff here, you won't have any idea pretty much what we've done. So it was last year we had a meeting that was looking at emergency responses from organisations. Now, we didn't just look at natural disasters, we looked at threats from other people, so the bomb threat and the terrorists and all that sort of thing, and also organisational emergencies that is part of our business as usual, so policies and procedures to prevent fraud and, all those sorts of things. But in terms of the role that you guys play and that sort of thing, we went through at the time, you guys were called out to an emergency. So we had Aviva come in, who was on secondment at that time in one of your roles, and she sat in the background because she wasn't going to be part of it. And she was really happy with what we did because we'd had conversations beforehand about how we were going to proceed, what we're going to do, and we shared all the information with Rachel and the fella who's been seconded. Nathan,
Yeah.
yes, yeah, sorry. So we'd done all these PowerPoint presentations and things like that, and everything was all fitted in. The main thing we did was talk about the community response as opposed to the formal response. And because a lot of people get confused that when they do a community hub and stuff like that, that feeds into the civil defence response. And it's not. It's a community response, it's an informal response, but the role of our team and the council is connecting them, as we've heard, into these guys. So we've been supporting our organisations through looking at what they can do as individuals, then as organisations, and then seeing if they wanted to go beyond that and looking at community. So we had, obviously, the Belfast guys have the Belfast Emergency Response Plan, and you guys have funded a water tank as part of that for their thing. We've given the Northwood Residents Association a generator, and they're part of that particular one as well. We've also had All Souls in the Corner identify as wanting to be a community hub for the Merivale Fendalton ward, actually. And so we're working through that slowly with them. That's a bit of a give and take as their capacity and resources allow, but we've given them a generator as well. And the other area, Waimāero, we're looking at having a session with those groups in August, where we're going to again take them through a refresher of looking at individual responses, organisational responses, looking at their resources and capacity to see if they want to go beyond. Because originally there was a group there that said, yep, we want to be a community hub. So from our perspective, what we're looking at doing is, and just quite naturally, they identified and we would have one in each ward area. So that's going to be really great. And ideally, if we have a hub in each area, we can actually then look to communicate them together to be able to give you guys a better idea of what's happening. And as they do put their hands up and say, we want to do this, we want to do that, we'll get you guys in with all your expertise. So when we're out at Burke, Belfast, we got Rachel and the team to come out. We did a trial run to see how it worked. And like the reality of it was a little bit different from what their expectations were. So, yeah, and a lot of people in certain areas over here think, well, because we're not necessarily going to have a tsunami impact us potentially, part of our role could be supporting the people who have to come away from those areas and things like that. So there's lots of great conversations been happening in this space, even though you wouldn't necessarily usually associate us with it. And in terms of your hot and cold there, Aaron, you have been funding heat pumps. You may or may not remember, we've been looking at supporting that in our community facilities and churches and things like that, so they are able to open up and let people come in and share the heat or the cold, depending on what the circumstances are. So our little bits and pieces are happening.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Matt.
Aaron?
Three, probably for Brendan as well, but three completely different ones. One on the tsunami modelling for the coast. It'd be really good to, if the worst case scenario is 90 minutes for something catastrophic, to have a clear showing of the modelling of how many vehicles can leave the coastal district in 90 minutes. And so if we did some like corflute signs that went up on a whole lot of lampposts for a few months, so everyone stops and looks at them and actually has a read and goes, this many vehicles can exit. But in this area, there's this many vehicles, which means this percentage, whatever the number is, have to get out on by foot or by bike. If you're able, you should be one of those people. What does your plan look like? So people stop, look, read, and kind of take it on board to go, actually, we all can't get out in a car. And it'll be 1.6K might be a gift. It could be even worse than that. And so I think that would be a really good model to run, because it becomes, when people see the actual numbers of how many can get out, then they start to change their thinking rather than, yeah. So that is one suggestion for a campaign in all the coastal areas. The other one is planning around something like a Carrington event. What's the I don't hear much on that, Brendan. That was the one that hit in the 1800s, but it's a solar flare.
Yeah, it's a solar flare taking out the electronics.
Yeah, but it will take out all the electronics, which will be catastrophic, including all the banking systems, and that will go. So countries that go cashless will turn into absolute
They shall,
anarchy and so on and so forth. But what is the planning around that? Do we have it in our list?
Yeah, I can speak to both of those. So if I go in reverse order, the Carrington event was 1859, and it was the first sort of modern technological event because of the invention of the telegraph system. So that affected large scale network telegraphs across, it was primarily the States and Europe. But what will happen in New Zealand is it will affect our long run transmission network. So later on this year, we're simulating this exercise with the National Emergency Management Agency, and excuse me, and that it's a part of our exercise program. The sun goes through an 11-year cycle, and that 11-year cycle, we're just coming off the back of what's called solar maximum, which is the likelihood of there's three different types of ways that the sun can really impact on the Earth in a catastrophic event. They are more likely during solar maximum and less likely during solar minimum, but that's not saying the events don't happen any other time as well. So we're coming off the peak of solar maximum. That is, there's a national space weather plan. We have our own version of that. It's very much at a national and regional level, though. We'll feel some of the consequences of that, but there's very little we can do to mitigate the impact. We have spoken to Orion about it. Orion's talking to Transpower talking to NEMA, so very much operating at a regional and national level. The reason we're not hearing about it here so much is because it's been dealt with at a regional and national level, but we're certainly aware of it. We go back to the other conversation around tsunamis and communicating with the public around their expectations for evacuation. As a part of our wider tsunami program, of which Emily's a very much a key part, in there we have a comms plan which will talk to what it means to evacuate. So what signs you would hear, how to make a decision. Louis talked about the plan you'd have to enable that, where you would go, what you would take, how you would get there, which to your point, Aaron, is in there. So broadly, yes, there is a comms plan. So specifically, yes, there's a comms plan. Broadly, it'll address the point you raised there around please don't take your car. Although we were at a community board recently and the chair raised the point that his family has to take a car because of his domestic situation. So there'll be some people that have to, many others don't. So it's getting the message right, saying if you can walk or bike, do that. If you can't walk or bike, your circumstances are slightly differently. You should do what needs to be right for you. Excuse me. And then that will reduce the congestions on the road, which will increase the chances of people getting out of here. And you'll notice all my language in here is mitigated because there's very few absolutes in tsunami evacuation planning. We can't tell them a very specific set of things to do because at night and day will be different. School time and not school time will be different. And each individual family will be different as well too. So the comms and the messaging around that needs to be nuanced and well thought through and delivered. But absolutely take your point. People need to understand that getting in the car and driving for most people is a bad option, but not for everyone.
One, I don't want to. You might be able to answer this. You might not. Have you modelled the likelihood of the community actually following that guidance?
Excuse me. So two things on that. One, we haven't because modelling is so expensive.
Yeah,
to get the scientist time and to put all the parameters in and do it is very expensive. But we do have national level guidance on who will follow those instructions. And I'm broadly optimistic. It'll never be 100%.
We'll take broadly optimistic. Was there one other?
There was one, last one, Brendan, and it's just on the AF8. So some of the models that I've seen when I was on the DHB showed where the damage is, and my big fears around the valleys, the power stations, and then of course the infrastructure coming to the city. Worst case scenario is power's knocked out for literally months or several months to get a rebuild going, especially if you lost a couple of dams. I'm picking there is a plan. If there's no electricity in Christchurch for 3 months, what a plan looks like. Or even
so
5 months.
The modelling for the power outages for Christchurch aren't as bad as that. There are parts of the West Coast where it is extremely concerning. The further you get away from the fault line, the damage to large-scale infrastructure steps down. The modelling I've seen for Christchurch indicates some moderate damage, but not large-scale widespread.
Damage here, not a problem, and none of our power stuff will get knocked out. None of the power's made here, or a very small amount, 3%, 2%. Everything else comes in from the Alpine Fault area was the fear and what I got shown.
Yeah, so the dams specifically that do the hydroelectric generation are super sensitive. The gear there's, I'd encourage you to go and have a look at it one day. It's amazing. So they instantly shut down. They have a lockdown mode that they go into. They're quite well protected. And the resilience built in by the dam operators and Transpower is pretty solid. So they're quite confident that there'll be a short period while the power's out, and then they'll be able to brown start, they call it. So not a complete blackout. They'll be able to generate it again. There is some modelling to suggest that a complete blackout will have some challenges, but that won't affect Christchurch.
Okay, cool.
It's really home solar and batteries, and you create a whole lot of resiliency in local power network.
Yeah, they do. So individually, that's right. At a community level, a bit trickier.
Yeah. Awesome. Does anyone have any other questions? It's just getting late. I'm sure everyone will probably like to get home. No?
It's great.
Awesome. Thanks very much for coming in, everyone. It's been really helpful.
Thanks for the thanks. Thanks for having us.
No worries. Your photo needs an update. Been another emergency since then.
We haven't had another.